Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Chapter 13. We're talking about evolution and Darwin. We made it up to talk about the evidence of evolution. We talked about the fossil record. Remember, I didn't actually get a chance to talk about it at the time, but we talk about it now. Fossilization itself is actually an incredibly rare event. Fossils don't get formed easily. There are a lot of conditions, or a lot of special conditions that have to occur for a fossil to be made. One of those special conditions is it has to either fall in water or be covered in mud, or both. And that's actually a relatively rare event for something to die in water and then to immediately be covered in mud. And the reason why it has to immediately be covered in mud is to keep scavengers from eating the body. If scavengers eat the body, then there's no fossil to be made. It has to fall in water, it has to be covered in mud, and then it has to stay that way for several million years until it gets compressed and it makes this thing called a fossil. If it has to fall in water, then how many fossils of desert creatures are there? How many fossils of forest creatures are there? Not many. So how many fossils of ocean creatures are there? Lots. So the fossil record, we use it. It's pretty good for a lot of groups of animals, whales, fish, lots of aquatic organisms. Not as good for terrestrial organisms. Fossilization is actually a pretty darn rare event. So what we do is we look at the fossil record. If you can imagine that when you look at the strata, when you look at the layers of rock, we can clearly see all the different layers of rock in this picture. Which was the first layer that was put down? Which was the first layer? Which is the oldest layer? Well, obviously it's the bottom one. And then the next layer of rock was made. It was dirt and then turned into rock. And then more dirt was laid on top of that and got pressed down into rock. And more dirt got laid on top of that. And so as you move from layer to layer to layer, you're moving up. You're getting closer to the present. So when you look at the layers of rock, when we look at the fossils that we find in those layers, we find that the fossils at the bottom are simpler. And as you progress up the strata, we find that the fossils become increasingly complex as you move up. Organisms started off simple and became more and more complex as they accumulated those adaptations that we talked about in the previous video. They accumulate adaptations as they migrate, or as time goes on. And an individual, and let me make this clear, an individual does not accumulate adaptations. The species accumulates adaptations. Only the individuals that survive today can have babies tomorrow. And only by recombining the genes present today can I get new combinations of genes in the children of tomorrow. An individual cannot change the genes that they have. The only way to get new combinations of genes are for two different individuals to come together and to make a new baby. As we move up the layers of rock, we find that the fossils become more complex. As time went on, animals and plants accumulated new adaptations. They, through random chance, through random mutation, developed these new adaptations that allowed them to better survive in their environment. If you think about it, imagine the drawings that you made when you were a child, when you were a toddler, and you picked up a crayon for the first time, and you drew a little stick figure, and you drew a little heart for your mom, and you gave it to her, and she put it on the refrigerator. That was a very simple drawing. And as you went to pre-K, as you went to kindergarten, and first, and second, and third, and fourth, and probably all the way up until 6th grade, you were drawing every year. You were still drawing pictures, and what happened to the complexity of those pictures? What happened to the quality of those pictures as the years went by? They started off very simple in the beginning, and the longer that you experimented, the longer that you practiced, the more complicated, the more different bits and pieces got added to your pictures, and the better they became. As I said, the fossil record is incomplete. It's incomplete because how common is fossilization? Fossilization is a rare event. It only happens in and around water with any regularity. If you're not in near water, it's not going to happen very common at all. Very few organisms will live in areas that favor fossilization. Now, let me talk about that for a second. Yeah, there are lots of animals that live in the water, but then again, there are lots of animals that don't live in the water. So we talk about terrestrial organisms. They don't live in the water, they live on land. So there are lots of organisms, lots of living things. They live in habitats that are not favorable for the process of fossilization. Not only is fossilization itself a relatively rare event, fossils can be destroyed through natural processes. When we talked about the Galapagos, we said, hey, look, this is brand new land. All this other land had been there for hundreds of millions of years. Land can be destroyed, just as land can be created. The tectonic plates, we'll talk about that in chapter 15. The tectonic plates, every land mass is essentially floating on a giant plate of land, of rock. What's underneath of that rock is lava, is liquid rock, magma, and they float and they move around. When two plates hit each other, what can happen is that one plate will get pushed underneath of the other one. And as the lighter plate, as this plate gets pushed underneath, what is it going down into? It's going down into lava. It's going down into liquid rock. And what happens when you put ice in water? The ice melts. What happens when you put rock in lava? The rock is going to melt. Land can be destroyed. Any fossils that were on that land got destroyed with it. A few lineages are well documented. A series of fossils showing the modification of the teeth of reptiles into mammals. In biology, too, we might have a chance to talk about mammalian teeth. Mammalian teeth are actually a lot different than the teeth of all of the rest of the animals, and that's because it's their teeth are a lot more complicated. We have a lot of different teeth in our mouth, unlike an alligator. Imagine an alligator's mouth. They have a lot of teeth, but all those teeth are the same shape. How about the teeth in your mouth? A bunch of different teeth, a bunch of different shapes, different shaped teeth. It's a big deal. A very good lineage of fossils depict the evolution of a wolf-like creature into modern-day whales. Again, why do we have a really good documented case of these guys? Where are whales found? In the ocean. Pretty good transition of fish into amphibians. Where are they found? In water. And we do have pretty good documentation for the origin of birds from dinosaurs. From a specific line of dinosaurs. As the years go by, as time goes by, more and more, we find that more and more species of dinosaurs probably had feathers. Just to hurt your feelings, what is the dinosaur that everybody knows? What is the hero of all the Jurassic Park movies? The T-Rex. The T-Rex is the hero of the Jurassic Park movies. Go watch any Jurassic Park movie. Who saves them in the end? It's the T-Rex who saves them in the end. T-Rex had feathers.